The Homestead Acts. The Homestead Acts were a series of United States federal laws that gave people the option to apply for land called homesteads at small to zero cost. The first Homestead Act was created in 1862, which was passed by Abe Lincoln. This was significant because it gave women and free slaves the possibility to apply for land. The Homestead Acts were first proposed before the Civil War, but was rejected by Southern Democrats who wanted more slave states. The Donation Land Claim Act of 1850 led to the creation of the Homestead Acts by pushing for the idea of opening the West for settling by individual people. This act allowed settlers to claim lands in the Oregon Territory between 1850 and 1854, costing $1.25 per acre. The Homestead Act of 1862 was passed by Republicans and had the intent of liberalizing the homesteading requirements of the Preemption Act of 1841. The homestead was a space of public land in the West that was granted to any U.S. citizen that was willing to settle and farm the land for at least 5 years. The Southern Homestead Act of 1866 was important because it allowed poor farmers and sharecroppers in the South to become landowners during Reconstruction. It was also needed after the Civil War because the slaves in the South were all freed, but wasn't very successful because it was still too expensive for them to afford. The Timber Culture Act of 1873 granted up to 160 acres of land to anyone who would plant at least 40 acres of trees. The Kincaid Amendment of the 1904 granted large homestead tracts that went up to 640 acres in western Nebraska. The Enlarged Homestead Act of 1909 was significant because it enabled dry land farming and increased the number of acres in a homestead to 320 acres for farmers that were willing to accept land in the Great Plains. However, a misunderstanding of the ecology led to erosion and eventually to the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. The Stock Raising Homestead Act of 1916 was passed for settlers that were seeking 640 acres for ranching purposes. The Subsistence Homesteads provisions under the New Deal in 1930 renewed interest in homesteading by Franklin D. Roosevelt's program of subsistence homesteading. Subsistence homesteading gave small plots of land to urban poor so that they could sustain themselves. Unlike subsistence farming, subsistence homesteading was based on family member having part-time paid employment. The positive results of Homestead Acts included giving some free slaves property to farm on, as well as the expansion of the United States and the growing of the economy. It also helped in the New Deal by giving poor land to sustain themselves on. The negative results of the Homestead Acts included pushing Native Americans across North America into reservations, being too expensive for the freed slaves to afford, and the overuse of land leading to the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression.